Hello and welcome to Gamepass Gaming. I'm your host Flap, and as always, co-hosting the show with me tonight we have Puxley. How are you, sir?
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you, Flap. How are you doing?
Yeah, a very, very busy week this week for obvious reasons, and that's the whole point of this show. And kind of writing these topics this week were kind of easy to some degree, but it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. So, hi to everyone in the chat. The chat's piling in already, so hi everyone there. Regular on the show, joining us every single week. Please welcome to the show, VJ. How are you, mate?
I'm great, thank you, Flap. It's a pleasure to be back on the show.
You had a good week?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah.
Have you had a busy week?
Busy week, yeah. Well, if you're asking me specifically what I've been doing, yeah, I've been playing on my Xbox Series X, and I've been reading a couple of books as well. And I'm just worried that they're based on dystopian social science and fiction.
Oh, no.
So that might come through in the way I speak today. It normally has an influence on me. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's no overlap then. And joining us today, unfortunately, we're a guy down, but we do have Wandering Dutch. So how are you, sir?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very good. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no worries. You had a busy week?
Yeah, very busy. I'm still working. I'm still in the office, so no changes there for me. Other than that, obviously, as we know, Xbox Series X. So been playing that as and when I can. And now, obviously, as I've just said before I come on there, redoing the game room again.
Excellent. Was that just reorganizing, or have you bought new stuff, or?
Oh no, it's moved walls entirely. So the TV came down, the consoles came down, new shelving units, everything hidden, cable management galore.
Yeah, that sounds quite hardcore. Excellent, well done. Well, we're supposed to be 5 strong tonight, but unfortunately we're a man down. We've got a man down. Stubbs Gaming can't make it tonight. He was due to be here. He's not feeling very well, so send him some love and support if you can in the chat, please. But we'll get him on as soon as we can. I hope you feel better soon, Matt. I don't know if you're listening in, but yeah. So let's do a quick round of what we've been playing, because there's obviously not only has there been some new consoles this week, there's been a slew of new games for us to play. Not only sort of paid for games, but stuff on Game Pass as well. So let's do reverse order. Dutch, what have you been playing?
For me, I've had a right mixed bag. Now, the one that I keep going to, and I don't even know why, but it keeps catching me, is that Tetris Connected.
Yes. Yes,
I don't know why.
Exactly what you mean.
It's just something about it. Granted, it's just Tetris, but it's so colourful, and then obviously add on the kind of difficulties the further you get into it, and the music's brilliant as well. Obviously, you wear headphones with it, and it makes it so much better. But it's a nice, easy one to relax with.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've dived into Bright Memory. I've dived into Falconeer, and of course Valhalla.
Well, of course, yes, that's going to be an interesting chat, that one. We'll perhaps come on to Valhalla a little bit later on in our first topic. But yeah, no, it's great to know that you got your Series X. I do have to make a shout out actually to SX2, Scott, who's been on the show 3 times, I believe. I saw earlier on Twitter that unfortunately his Series X no longer seems to boot up anymore. So I can only imagine how you feel and how gutted you feel. And I just hope that Microsoft, they do the right thing and get you a new one or a spare one sent as soon as. But yeah, I feel your pain, my friend, because I know how gutted you must be with that. But so VJ, you've got a Series X as well. So what have you been playing?
I've been playing Forza for hours, to be honest with you, pretty much non-stop since I wanted to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the studios in anticipation of Playground Games is, hopefully decent interpretation and rendition of the upcoming Fable. I wonder what that might hold for us, and just to give me a good heads up. And but I'm enjoying the game regardless, and you have to I've had to put in a load of hours so I can get the online component going. So people, and so on and so forth. So and I just kickstarted off with Gears 1 as well.
Oh wow!
But I've got a ton of games downloaded, or downloading, should I say? So so I'm pretty much looking forward to dive back into it once the podcast is over with. So,
yeah, no, that's fine. Well, is this kind of your first foray into Game Pass full on?
Yeah, you're probably pretty much right there. Yeah, I haven't really played within a gaming subscription service before, Obviously, we talk about it every single week, so on numerous podcasts. So I may come across that someone who's really well versed in it, but no, I'm not. So.
Well, no, you're on the inner circle now, so you can talk from experience, and that's great to have you in that situation. Puxley, well,
hello.
Yeah, let's spend 5 minutes hearing your story, because I know obviously you were after trying to get another one pre-ordered. So what happened on Tuesday? Talk us through it.
Yeah, okay. So quick lowdown to everybody. I didn't get a pre-order when they went live in end of September, and I woke up extra early on Tuesday morning to try and nab myself one of the launch morning orders. And this is between me and Stubbs as well, because we both went for the exact same thing. So I'm kind of telling it for both of us. So yeah, I got up super early. I looked at the Xbox UK Twitter link that said that these stores are the ones to go to. Had all the tabs open. Waited till 8 a.m. Went live. Not much was going on afterwards. I was hitting refresh and nothing. And I was searching, and then things started to crash, and I was thrown into queues for game. And then partner was next to me, and she started opening up her own links on her laptop, and she was meant to be working at this point. She was like, "Oh, I'll try and help you out." So, so she was opening up different links as well. And she was like, "Oh, try this store, try that store." And then, of all places, I actually went on to Asda, the grocery shopping center, and of all places, they actually had a load on there, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I hit the add to basket button, and it was going through. Like, "Oh, wow! It's not actually it's not telling me lies. It's actually valid." So I was like, "Okay, it's in the basket," and then started going through the system, putting my my details in, email, and all the rest of it, my address. And when it came to payment, that's when things started to go a bit downhill, because I started off with a credit card, and then that seemed to crash and boot me out. And then I thought, okay, let's try again with a debit card. I did that. Looked promising, but then that kicked me out. And then I thought I'd try again with PayPal instead to see if that would work. And then that threw me out and gave me errors. And then I thought, okay, I'll refresh again for a fourth time. And then before I knew it, the system decided to take the system out of my basket, list it as out of stock, and then I couldn't buy it anymore. It was in my grasp, and then I quickly lost it.
Yeah, that must be so frustrating. And to be honest, I've kind of written the second topic tonight around that kind of frustration. And like I say, we were due to have Stubbs on, and I was very conscious that we obviously had, half the panel kind of had the Series X next gen and half the panel didn't, and it was trying to be sort of sensitive to both sides really, and just get a holistic view on this whole launch and the next gen in general really. But and I'm guessing there's people in the chat as well that will listen to the show that perhaps haven't either been successful in getting a next gen console or opting to wait a little bit. But in
a very small way, it's been I suppose I'm probably trying to make myself just feel a bit better, but it's probably a bit of a blessing in disguise, because it's given me a chance to go back to play some Ghost of Tsushima again on the PS4. So I've been enjoying that over the weekend, actually. Just to go over what I've been playing. Yeah,
that's good. And a little bit like SX2 said on his tweet, he has got his fallback Xbox One X, and although it's not the Series X, he can still game and he can still play a lot of the Xbox titles and stuff, thankfully. So I just need to make a quick shout out to the chat. We've already got 24 people in. Was a 55, literally just joined us. Welcome, my friend. I'm not very good at responding to your comments, because there's just so many plates spinning for me. So it's much easier if I give you a shout out. So Carlos Damara, Indie Gamer, Fugly, Pong Soul, as always, Assassin Looper, Dragon Wolf. You're doing well on the Xbox Gamer Store this month, Dragon Wolf. You seem to be ahead of me at the moment. Maisuko, Carlos Damara. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. Ubel, who was with Shizno Elite, Hertog Vin. Let's do some more. Oh, Juan Castillo as well. I think you're fairly new, so welcome to the show. I think he was there actually last week. But excellent. Thank you, chat. It's always great to have you here, and I really need your input this week, chat. So let's get into the first topic. And it's been a little bit frustrating, really, because I've really enjoyed the Series X, but there's been some sort of bad news stories around, people blowing vape smoke into it and all sort of silliness and stuff. But again, there's been some media articles, sort of gaming media, just sort of questioning the validity of next generation. And some people saying, it doesn't really feel like a massive leap forwards, and it's only kind of we're at a stage where the graphical fidelity is only sort of incremental at this stage. And I really take issue with this, if I'm honest. And I know the Series console, Series X and S, have been kind of pointed out. And I've got a quote here from James Batchelor from gamesindustry.biz, and he's talking around the Xbox Series X. But he says there's a wave of games arriving this week, such as star title Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but there's no wow factor like there is with the PlayStation 5, as in Miles Morales, Astro's Playroom, and Demon's Souls. And I'm not really sure I buy into that. Okay, there isn't perhaps the first-party titles available on Xbox. It's not for the want of trying. Obviously, Halo Infinite, we know what happened there. And it was obviously a massive blow to the launch lineup. But despite that, Xbox have just had their biggest, as they're calling it, biggest launch. And I think by biggest, they actually mean number of territories. We don't really know if they mean units sold. There was an estimate that it was between 1.2 and 1.4 million. But do you think that, and let's go to you first, Puxley, if we can, because we rarely go to you first on this. But do you think that the Xbox Series X will continue to sell at a sustained rate once the hardcore gamers have all got one? Or do you think, the Sony launch exclusive will kind of steals people attention when it comes to them choosing a next-gen system?
I think in time, definitely the Series X will pick up momentum. And I believe, also read something recently that I think, again, this could be due to the fact that majority of owners that have a Series X currently are probably the hardcore enthusiasts, right? But I did see some statistics earlier over the weekend that 70% of Series X and S players actually do have subscribed to Gamepass now, which I found interesting. But again, that could be due to a small pool of people. So I don't know how large that number really is. I'm kind of looking at it from both sides and then playing devil's advocate of myself. Sorry, but I think to start with, I have a feeling that the sales may initially slow down unless Microsoft again try to push a bigger marketing agenda with Game Pass, because I think at the moment that's the real selling point, I think, for Game Pass, for me at least, and I'd like to think for a lot of other people once they realize what it's all about. And I do think with the PlayStation 5 having Spider-Man, Miles Morales and Demon's Souls will definitely help sell those units, at least in the initial period. But then the other side of the coin to that, though, is that people like myself who I enjoyed Spider-Man on the PS4, but I'm in no rush to play the new one, and I was never a Souls fan. So for that reason as well, I'm in no rush to get a PS5 either. So I think at this moment, I can't help but feel that it might sit in the bank of, people probably buying the systems that their friends are all going to get, if you get what I mean. Because you don't want to be that one guy who has the opposite system, and everyone else has bought the other one. And I've been in that position before. And it sucks, to be perfectly honest. So I think at the start, it's probably going to be more word of mouth is how I'm kind of seeing it. But I'd like to think that hopefully moving into next year, when we start to really see the new, especially first-party titles, right, from Xbox, I'd like to think that once we see more of these hitting the shelves and more trailers and stuff coming along, and hopefully as well advertising Game Pass, I'd like to hope I feel that would help sell units at least into next year.
Yeah, I think the word of mouth is quite a powerful thing, isn't it? Particularly in the playground. I know that sounds a little strange, but I think the PlayStation 4 generation was kind of one in the playground almost. It seems to a certain degree because there was so much bad press around the One X and stuff, and everyone was jumping ship to PS4. And there's lots of younger kids now that have obviously grown up a little bit and are on the Sony bandwagon, as it were, kind of thing. But so let's come to you next, VJ, if you don't mind. So obviously, Microsoft have had very positive initial sales, but do you think they can sustain it and try and stay neck to neck with Sony if they don't have the first party exclusives? You on mute, VJ? Is he there? We'll come to you then, Dutch. Same question to you.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Dutch. No problem. Sorry, I'll go on.
Personally, to me, it didn't really matter. Again, I'm going to get a PlayStation 5 anyway. Originally had a PlayStation 5 pre-ordered, and then I cancelled it pretty late on. I only cancelled it about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And that was down to the fact that for me, there wasn't a launch exclusive that I wanted on PlayStation.
It's interesting.
Further cemented by the fact that then Godfalls had some very poor reviews, and that was the only game I wanted.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've got Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4. I've got a PS4 Pro as it is at the moment anyway. But I wasn't a big fan of that. Just not my cup of tea. I don't mind Marvel and superhero films and things like that, but Spider-Man's never been one of my favorites. So it wouldn't have made much sense. It would have just been buying Spider-Man for the sake of buying Spider-Man. In terms of Xbox, I already had a massive back catalogue of games that I can play enhanced immediately from the off. And it wasn't the case of it being optimized completely. It was a case of, no, these are, because of the way that they've been originally created, we can actually do more with them from the start. We're not even having to optimize them. They just run better and look better. So that was already a bonus. But then I already knew that third-party titles for the vast majority were going to run and look better. Now, of course, there's caveats there. Sometimes, of course, it'll look better, but then it slightly performs worse than its competition. However, of course, the one thing that a lot of people will admit from both of them is you're not going to notice a 1 or 2 frames per second drop if that is the difference between each. As long as the fidelity and it looks beautiful, and of course Valhalla looks absolutely stunning on the Series X. So I've got no qualms there. For me personally, it's not going to make me choose any differently from what I had. And I have to say I disagree that it hasn't got a wow factor. From what I've spoken to a lot of people, the sheer speed, smoothness and simplicity of the console and the way it reacts to games and quick resume as well across the board is very much one of probably the favoured features from everybody, regardless of what games they're playing. That seems to be an absolute lifesaver. You've got to think primarily for a lot of people is they've got, like myself as well, you've got to mix in family, work, and then we've got podcasts in between, and then try and fit in gaming time. So if you've got gaming time, that's then severely kind of increased because of those load times are massively reduced. Then you're getting more time to enjoy the hobby you want. And there's a lot of people that are in those kind of circumstances. They might only have an hour or so a night because they've got to put the kids to bed, or they come in from work, or they've got a family to look after. So being able to jump on a game for an hour means you're probably going to get 59 minutes worth of gameplay as opposed to probably about 40 minutes if you include load times. Now, that is a massive, massive change compared to what we're used to. And that's probably why people are reacting the way they are to it. I think personally, that's, to me, especially now over the last week, seeing the American market react to the PlayStation 5 and more problems on that system at launch than it seems to be on the Series X. Of course, we know people have had Series X's that just won't boot anymore. And they've had to send them back. And again, like SX2, very unfortunate. We did try changing his plug out and things like that, but it made no difference. But then on the PlayStation side, a case of, well, the console will start up, but then games don't boot, or when they do boot, the crash, and often, or then the hard kind of crash the console or things like that. And there seems to be more frequently, I'm seeing that across the board. So to me, I'm kind of happy that I haven't got one pre-ordered at this point, because it seems like there's more for them to iron out than there is for Xbox. Okay,
no, that's interesting. And there's always teething issues at the beginning of every generation. Absolutely, and it takes. And I think you might have mentioned it, VJ, a couple of shows ago. Actually, that it takes a little while for the manufacturing and the R&D to catch up with some of the issues once there's millions of these things out there. VJ, so same question to you. I mean, do you think Microsoft are able to sustain, selling a high rate of consoles over Sony's, and with a lack of launch titles? I know we've got the Medium coming, but do you think third party and Game Pass is enough to keep their sales momentum going?
I think I have to concur with my two panel members in Puxley and Dutch that. And see, gaming is completely subjective, and if there's not a game that you specifically want on a system, then you're obviously not going to purchase it. I think there's going to come a point where most gamers are going to want to own both, because as I said to you on the show before, is that I think that all three companies have geared up to have gaming propositions that no one can really deny. And for me, this time around, I bought the Xbox Series X because I just missed out on so many games, that first-party games such as Forza and Gears, which have always been staples in. And
you're a very good case in point. So, what percentage? And I know this is a very difficult thing to put your finger on, but what percentage of your sort of decision making around going with Xbox was based on Game Pass as well?
It wasn't really made around Game Pass. I have to be completely honest with you. I bought the Series X because it was the machine that I could get a hold of. Number two, I spent half an hour pressing the sync button next to the disk drive, thinking it was the on button, and thought my machine had bricked. At the top of the machine. So I'll admit it. I'll openly admit it, because it's all going to. So I'm making all sorts of notes, and then I just want to give out a shout to Mr. Tushi, because I wasn't familiar with the Xbox. I'm so familiar with PlayStation, and he helped me through setup and all sorts, and helping me retrieve my my gamer tag from 13 years ago, which was fantastic. And
so how did you find setup with the mobile app and stuff like that?
I didn't use the mobile app. I don't actually have a mobile phone,
right.
So I don't like having lots of electronics. I just actually usually borrow my wife's phone if I want to make a call or message anybody. So I just set it up just as you normally would, and people were saying it's going to take ages, but it was very swift. I know that the servers were pretty packed out, and everybody was downloading content and so on and so forth. But actually, my whole experience was very, very smooth. But just getting back onto the topic, I don't really want to make this the VJ show and his Xbox, and he doesn't know how to. What I'm a little bit more concerned about is what's happening in the industries. I don't really want to repeat what Dutch and Pugsley have already said. So I know you mentioned the VG charts, and for me, it's that numbers and saying it's a huge launch. It needs to be backed up with facts, and then and I think this is really, really important, right? And they need to share those facts, figures, numbers directly with us, because then they become irrefutable evidence, right? Otherwise, it's just propaganda and hearsay, and quite frankly, no different to claims made by any governmental or religious sect, right? Who are just full of babble and prattle and just
Do you think potential buyers need that sort of those numbers backed up then to have confidence in what they're hearing?
See, what my issue is okay, if you take VG charts, right, who at best guess have decreed their numbers, right, since they can't legally amalgamate published NPD reports, right, or weekly charts from the UK and Germany and amalgamate them and release numbers. They can't do that, right? They haven't cited any official source, and I just think it doesn't do Microsoft any good, right? Because from my point of view, since I've been in the game industry and other industries as well, it's like, to me, it's just a world of idiotic bliss, right? And that'll be my life, and it can be yours too, right? And sometimes I wonder if people conceded the right to think for themselves, right? Sometimes it's all about. Sometimes I think humans have out-sheeped sheep. Basically, sheep still need a shepherd and a sheepdog to keep them in line. Humans just end up keeping each other in line, right? So what I will say is that this is my asset. This is how I go about getting my facts. I was listening to Phil, and he was being interviewed on a YouTube show. I don't know what it was called, but it's something called Dropped Frames.
Yeah, I saw that.
So towards the end of the hour, he sort of went off script, Phil did, and he said, someone internally has said to me that we've pre-sold more Xbox Series X machines than they had sold Xbox Ones this year. So, and because I have those numbers to hand from official source, they've only sold about 1,500 Xbox Ones this year. So it was an interesting contrast, and allowed me to determine, obviously, someone who's someone who's an insignificant dabbler, right, in the industry, to sort of make. So I went ahead and just made my own theoretical conclusions, right, and I cross-referenced data I found from Japan, and from my perspective, then the Xbox pre-sold no more than, say, 3,000 units in Japan, which is about right, because that equates to 3 to 5% of the install base, right, in Japan, which sits at 100K, Sony sits at 10 million, and Switch sits at a crazy 15 million, right. So I think the question posed in and around the topic may be not of no consequence, but sales figures for me right now are perhaps inconsequential. And I think this is really important for that, because at least for the next 15 to 18 months, right, we might look at PlayStation 4 and Xbox One trajectories, and from that we would learn that the first 15 to 18 months for those two particular consoles, Sony sold 25-30 million, Xbox sold 18-22 million, so it's pretty neck and neck. And I can't recall if those consoles had anywhere near the quality of prestigious or captivating titles that we've got now at this generation. And I think, again, people have very short memories, right? I mean, I just heard Dutch say he's got a backlog of titles, and this is a guy that plays games 24/7, even if he is at the office. So, just a joke, Dutch. So,
it's probably right though.
yeah. So, even if the sales ratio remains the same, I think that in terms of Xbox One and PS4, I think these sales numbers could. And I said this a few months ago on the show, Flap, that these numbers, I think, will be eclipsed given the ongoing lockdown situation, which I believe will continue, right, from everything that I'm ascertaining. I'm not an expert or anything. Gaming is a major go-to pastime right now. Given the restrictions of outdoor sports, activities, travel, gatherings, and communion of any kind is limited, if not prohibited, enforced with fines and or arrests. So by I would say by the British government, but I'd say somewhat antiquated and fascist flavoured government, really. But anyway, that's just my opinion. But everyone's European mainland, and these are facts, right? The European mainland, from people that I've spoken to at publishers and distributors, at the moment, it's 3-1 in terms of Sony's favour right now. And it's already, this is a good thing for Xbox fans, already a massive improvement for Xbox on the 4-1. 1 and 10-1, depending on the territory. And so at the end of the day, it's going to come down to first-party games. They need to be exceptionally conceived, and we've talked about this on the show, and every facet of the games needs to be produced and executed and ultimately delivered to a high standard. We know, right?
I'm pleased you said about first-party titles, because that kind of neatly brings us on to the next part of this first topic. But before we do, I just need to make a shout-out to Wakanda Xbox News today. Hello, my friend Caitlin Phillips. Hello. I caught you quickly on the live podcast you did with Mav. I need to go back and watch it all. But, yeah, it was great. It's good to see you on there as well, actually, because I know we've kind of conversed a few times. And Fun Speculation himself. Hello, welcome to the chat. Yeah. Pucks, what's going on in the chat?
Well, a lot of Xbox, I think, gaming love at the minute, actually. Talking about what games people have been playing and enjoying the systems. I've got a few comments here that I saw. If you want me to read these out. So one here from Carlos Damara, who earlier said, loving the Series X at the moment. Valhalla is my first Assassin's Creed. I've played properly and I love it. Got a PS5 on pre-order for my son, which we're excited for as we missed out on the PS4 generation.
Me too.
Which, if you're getting a PS5, I mean, I talk about it a number of times, but definitely try Ghost of Tsushima if you can. I think it's probably one of the best new Sony IPs I've played in a long time, and I encourage anyone to try it out if you haven't already.
Something as well, isn't it?
It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
I just finished it on Saturday actually, in because I received my Xbox on the Friday. No, actually, I finished it on Friday just before I received my Xbox. So yeah,
excellent. Oh, that's cool.
Another one here from Wakanda Xbox News today, who says, I think the sales will all depend again on how many they can manufacture on all systems, but I think the PS5 will sell the most overall over the life of the gen, as Sony has the player base.
Well, that's the assumption, isn't it? And that's the market that Microsoft needs to kind of eat into, and that's kind of the whole essence, or part of the essence of today's show, is looking at how they're going to do that and how well they've done so far. But I think the assumption is that Sony are going to sell the most units. I know Microsoft have moved away from that metric for obvious reasons, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
Some more here I've got from Shizno Elite, who says, it's been a wow for me. Screw all the haters. I play more than just first party or exclusive games.
Yeah,
which is very true. Obviously, it's more than just first party. I mean, I know we talk about first parties a lot for either system, but that's a very good point, actually. Obviously, no matter what system you get, most people do play third parties, right? Because they kind of come out for everything. And last one here, I kept this comment mainly for a good reason, actually. It's mainly around my reasons why I decided to get a console, actually, and I'll come to that in a minute. So the Indie Gamer who earlier said that PC for the win. Well, no, that's just for a laugh, I know. But I bring this up because
stick him in the cooler, ban him for 20.
But the reason I bring this up though is because I remember, I think probably late last year, just before the Series X teaser was shown at the Game Awards, I remember saying then, after I built my gaming PC, that I've got my gaming PC now. Why would I need a new system? But this is before the specs were out, right? I think this is a good point to raise, because a lot of people do say, "Oh, PC for the win, PC master race, whatever." And of course, there's a lot of things which PC can do and has been able to do for a number of years, way before consoles have, right? But the thing for me, which really changed my mind as to I need a system and I want an Xbox, is because of the value of what you get hardware-wise compared to the equivalent which you have to pay for PC. Because I think the equivalent like processor and graphics card to get the same level of performance in terms of visual quality and all the rest of it. I know it's a bit hokey depending on what numbers you look at and where you're from, but you're still looking at about just short of £2,000 worth of PC parts to build an equivalent system. And I think if you can get the same level of performance from a £450, $500 box, then why would I not invest in that instead? Is my
no, I completely agree.
And
it's interesting because I think the GPU was pitched at the sort of 2080 Ti kind of levels on PC. That the Series X one. I know it's difficult to do a direct comparison, and perhaps it's more similar to the 3070 actually. Now that that's here, but yeah, I mean, how much do those cards, graphics cards alone, cost compared to the Series X?
I mean, I know, of course, there's certain titles which people will always prefer on PC, and although titles which are only available on PC, and that's fair enough, right? Things like League of Legends and those kind of clicker-based games and fast reaction-based games, which controllers mainly just can't compete with. I can understand there's always a market for that, but it's just the value in the price points for me, which has turned me over to wanting a console again. Is kind of what I'm really getting at here. And I'd like to think that a lot of people may be in a similar boat to that. I'd like to think I'm not just the only one that thinks that way.
But again, I'd counter that by saying, well, you can plug a mouse and keyboard into the Series X, and you could the Xbox One, to be honest, and it recognizes it straight away. And lots of games are now supported with it. So, if you had your Series X stood on your PC desk next to your monitor with your mouse and keyboard, you just literally plug them in. And if, let's say you've got a low-end gaming PC, well, then the Series X, like you say, bang for buck, is going to be better than anything you could play on your PC at that point. But
no, that's a good point. I do tend to forget you can plug a mouse and keyboard in now. So no, very good point.
So Indie Gamer actually mentioned what's on the screen. This is a game called Supraland. I really enjoyed this, and he said that it's got a left-handed protagonist. I never actually noticed while I was playing that the protagonist is left-handed, but it's a good little game. It's not, you know what? I really struggled to know what to put on the screen this week, because I'm thinking if I put anything like Valhalla or Call of Duty or anything next gen on there, there's potentially going to be spoilers. So I thought, right, I'll play something fairly generic. And a game that I've enjoyed recently. So yeah, this is Supraland. Dutch, let's come to you next if you don't mind. So again, I'm continuing to quote this James Batchelor from the GameIndustry.biz. He said, whoever purchases Series X today is buying a promise, one that Microsoft may not deliver for years. And I think that the whole context around this is that obviously all of the first-party titles are still some way off. I mean, do you believe that we're buying into a promise with Microsoft, or do you think that obviously owning a Microsoft device already and knowing that these games are coming is good enough to convince most people to jump onto the brand?
I think especially day one investors like ourselves have bought into promises from both. The promise that PlayStation are going to continue to push out the same quality content throughout the entire of this gen as they did last gen is a promise that PlayStation need to fulfill. And of course, the promise that the investments that Microsoft have put into studios to create those games is also one that they have to fulfill. So yes, but the shoe is on both feet. Both still have a lot to prove. It is a new gen. Everything's out the window from last gen. You have to start again. As you say, especially in working terms, you're only as good as your current month. Whatever has happened in the past is in the past. You have to press on and go forward. That's always been my look, no matter how people kind of look at it.
Yeah.
To me, the thing that Xbox have automatically rectified is being the underpowered console this generation. They started, and I mean, it was like 1.2 teraflops or something like that on the previous gen, might be 1.3. It was not a powerful console. It barely push out 1080p initially. It was bundled with a camera nobody really wanted. It was £100 more expensive than the competition.
Yeah.
And although they had a few games at launch, a few of those games fell flat on their arse, and they didn't get great ratings, as much as they're beloved now to some people, i.e. Rise, who were all kind of keenly hoping to kind of expand on that universe and bring in another game. Unfortunately, none of the kind of launch titles that came across outside of Forza really did anything. And they weren't massive successes. So you can't really compare both generations. They've rectified one issue. They have, in the works, rectified the second issue, which is first-party titles.
But I guess the essence of the article is that although they've kind of seemingly fixed it, and I would agree that they have, that it's still not fixed at this moment in time, as in the games aren't here yet.
Yeah, it's part like I say, it's partly, but again, we're really investors. It's kind of preaching to the choir at this point, because anybody who you're saying, oh, you don't want to get a console immediately, are people that really want a console at launch.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Are hardcore players. You tend to find the vast majority of people, the actual kind of meat and bones of the subscriber base, don't really come into it until about 2 years down the line, if not a little bit pushing on from that. You've probably seen from both Sony and Xbox in the previous generation. I mean, Sony really started to kind of gather pace about 3-4 years into the generation, and then it just went ridiculous. I mean, we're talking like nearly 120 consoles sold. But at launch, I think maybe in the first year they did maybe 15 million, which was a lot of consoles. But then you compare that to the fact that over 7 years they've done 120 million. It's a big jump of subscribers later on in the generation compared to what it was at launch. So initially, although I understand what he's trying to say, yes, the vast majority of Xbox people are kind of booting into a promise. I think we've seen the fact that this time around we've seen the investment go into buying the studios to rectify it. Is the reason people are still investing. If they hadn't proactively went out of their way and tried to rectify it by getting some studios on board, then I think it would have been more of a case.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And like you say, Microsoft have, the statement of intent that, they have listened and they have hopefully learned from the previous generation and gone and done this to, like you say, rectify that whopping great hole in their sort of lineup.
Yeah, massive hole. And that's been Xbox's problem. They've had studios, but unfortunately those studios that they've got have always worked on staple games.
Yeah.
It's always been Turn 10 and Playground Games have done Forza or Forza Horizon. And then you've got the Coalition, of course, that took over Gears, and I've only ever done Gears. Then you had Rare, which went off the map for years, but then come back and done Sea of Thieves.
Yeah.
And of course, the problem is, and of course, that was a brand new IP, and to date is obviously extremely successful with over 15 million players. But there wasn't many new titles. Now, the best thing about this is they've now got 23 studios. Of course, Bethesda, when it goes through, will surmount to I think 7 or 8 of those studios. But they've already got new IPs on the boil that haven't been announced. We
that's
know
true.
that we have a brand new studio being built from the ground up. That is obviously we still don't know what that is, and we know that's a new IP. Or if it's again Perfect Dark, lo and behold, then that's a reboot of an IP that's been dead and dormant since 360. So yes, we are going on a promise, but it's a promise that has a lot more validity than what it would be, for instance, if we'd have invested and they hadn't kind of put that financing in place to get those studios on board. Like I say, Sony's are the one, is their promise is the fact that they're going to keep pumping out the same quality titles that they did last year.
That's a good point, actually. And who's expecting the most from who? Are we expecting the most from Microsoft, or Sony have got their previous generation to live up to be honest? And that's a tall order, isn't it?
Very tall order. Tall order. You think of all the games they brought out. Of course, we already know the sequels to two of the best, some of the biggest games of last gen, which was Horizon and God of War. And great. Horizon was a new IP. God of War was a reboot. Great that Horizon's got a sequel. It deserved one. And of course, the reboot version of God of War, in my opinion, was better than the originals. Of course, that's going to be controversial, but the sheer quality and the craftsmanship they put into that game, of course, deserved a second. But again, they've got staple IPs now. They do have some timed exclusivity to some of their new IPs that have come out. but we need to see more new IPs from them as well. And they don't have the same level of or quantity of studios that Xbox do now. I think they're still in the kind of maybe 10 to 12 studios.
Yeah, and like you say, if they're going to go for the quality over quantity, that's fine. But like you say, they've made a very stiff rod for their back that they have to live up to, and expectations are incredibly high. VJ,
yeah.
Do you think the same? I mean, do you think people that are buying a Series X, have you bought into a promise, or are you happy with what there is there today, and is that enough? And are you happy with that the promise of tomorrow is bright and rosy?
I have to make a distinction before I answer your question. Is that for me, console systems are just a means to an end, right? It's always about the content, how it engages you, and who are the creators behind it. That's it. It really doesn't bother me in terms of systems and so on and so forth, and how fundamentally they do. But sort of to answer your question, subjectivity notwithstanding, my analogy of Game Pass still stands. I think today, as I've mentioned on the show previous, Microsoft, it's like Microsoft 365 minus Excel, Word, Outlook, and right. So Microsoft have a lot of work to do to hit whatever their goal is, 100 million users or whatever it is, by putting, by saying, hey, look, we're going to put all our content day in day, first party especially, and as Dutch said, 23 studios or 35 teams worth of content day in day into it. So that takes my mind and my thoughts off into a different direction. Currently, there's 100 million Xbox Live users, 50 million Xbox One owners out there, and probably about 100 million PC gamers. If you look at the active Steam user accounts that are out there in terms of low-hanging fruit to go at. So attract like the 1.3 billion PC gamers and 2.3 billion mobile phone gamers to pay $2 or $5 or $15 per month is more of a moonshot part of the plan for me, especially for me at this given moment in time. So, and obviously everyone's entitled to their opinion. You may be perturbed or uncomfortable and presumably asking, why have I mentioned a subscription figure as low as $2? Go and research what Southeast Asian countries pay for Netflix and other services. You'll be surprised. Microsoft transactions and DLC will feature a lot in Xbox games of the future. In terms of big first-party games, Sony and Nintendo can point to increased quality and more so improved quality of games over the lifespan of their distinct and respective hardware systems. In all honesty, Xbox can't do that as much, if at all. So Sony and Nintendo, as you say, have to live up to the classic marketing strategy of future promise, but they've done so consistently over decades. Xbox have not.
Proven record then, I guess.
Yeah, to a degree. You say big Xbox first-party titles, and right now that's kind of, for me, like, I've bought into Xbox, I've bought into Game Pass, but that fact still remains unproven, right? So in fact statement to make that, that can be substantiated unless you sort of, a big game can be, it can just be referring to the size of the team and the size of the budget at the end of the day, right? Just note that we as consumers, and this is what there's a key point, there's a key word Dutch used, investment, and that just got me triggered a little bit. It's just note that as consumers, we're contributing, if not investing, $3 billion via Game Pass subscription every month, and we're actually funding the 23 studios, 35 teams every year for games we may not see for 2 or 3 years. Flap. It's not like Sony or Nintendo who develop games while taking all the investment risk on board. We can choose to withdraw our pledged investment in the midst of anticipating a good game and not purchase it and pay that $70, and in fact wait a year until it's like $20 or whatever, right? Or maybe never buy it, right? Xbox hasn't produced a system seller for arguably a very, very long time, right? And you can feel free to correct me. I'm happy to be humbled, right, with facts I'm not aware of, and so on and so forth. But Forza and Gears, which is up next for me, the Gears series, are good and can hold their head up high, if not just above water. However, the fortunes of Xbox One may have been different if Gears had actually been released earlier on in the lifespan of the Xbox.
Yeah, I get that.
Timing and window of opportunity, Flap, are critical for any game's release. You know that. Just go and ask People Can Fly, right, that are bringing out that game, and look at their checkered history of working with Epic and EA, and the timing has always hurt them. It seems conceivably, if not practically, that anything releasing over this actually dovetails back into your first question as well. Over the next 12 months, look, we're probably going to see games on souped-up engines, souped-up first-party engines and third-party publisher game engines until probably first-party engines or Unreal 5, as I understand, won't be released until the end of next year, are actually available. Now, perhaps looking at that, the Slipspace engine may well prove to be an anticipated scenario masterstroke, right? However, we simply don't know. We can just dream or guess, I guess. And anyone who claims the opposite outside of 3.4 is categorically an idiot, really. And there's just rumors, right? I would strongly repudiate anything anyone have to say in those terms. As I said, the upcoming Game Awards, Flap, and I'm finishing up here just in case you're worrying. The upcoming Game Awards has just sprung to mind. I just realised we're in November because Thanksgiving's down the road, and I'm not familiar with that as much as I should be, as I am with Christmas. So the upcoming Game Awards are on December the 10th, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
it'd be really interesting. Because it's the anniversary of the first ever reveal of the Xbox Series X. That's what I remember, and I don't want to upset Puxley because yes, I know Ghost of Tsushima was shown there as well, but it was a bit awkward to see that trailer. Anyway, the Game Awards of 2019 are, for me at least, flat synonymous with the announcement of the Xbox Series X.
Yeah.
If it would be very wise, pertinent, and historical if Microsoft could repeat that trick or replicate that feat sort of 2 years on the trot, and that's open to interpretation and wild speculation as much as you like there, Flap.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was speculation that they were going to drop a huge bombshell the day before, obviously on November the 9th. That didn't happen. That doesn't mean to say there isn't a bombshell yet to come, I guess. But yeah, perhaps if they could replicate something at the Game Awards again, some huge announcement, that would be quite a feat in itself, to be honest.
Huge.
Puxley, do you disagree? I mean, do you think that buying into the Xbox is buying into a promise at this moment in time, or do you think they've got enough content? And by content, I kind of mean Game Pass to keep people entertained until these big hitters do turn up.
I think the same. I think that is correct for both systems. I don't think that's just Xbox. I think whether or not you're a PlayStation or an Xbox gamer, or whether you're converting from one to the other, I think because there is a lack of kind of like a multitude of brand new system seller titles, I don't count Spider-Man and Demon's Souls because there are a very limited pool of players that want to play those.
I'm in exactly the same boat, mate. I'm intrigued to play Astro's Playroom and never go with a controller. I'm intrigued by that. Demon's Souls, I think the graphics would wow me for the first 20 minutes and then I would get pissed off with the gameplay.
Yeah.
Miles Morales is probably kind of my game. I would probably quite enjoy Miles Morales, but that's a lot of money to spend on one game, in all honesty.
I mean, for me,
that one seems to be the one that's crashing the most units at the moment, which is
really
a slight concern to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from my position, I mean, it's like someone who did convert from the 360 to a PlayStation 4. I'm quite happy knowing that I can still play the new Spider-Man and things like Sackboy: The Great Adventure. I mean, I love platformers. I've said it many times before, so I'm looking forward to knowing I can play that on this system. But I don't feel any immediate rush from for anyone really to want to jump unless you are a hardcore player. Obviously, I myself really wanted to jump back into this new. Obviously, I was going to jump in anyway, but it was the more recent news over the last few months which kind of got me more and more excited about it. And to be fair, for me, Game Pass was part of that kind of that feeling of wanting to jump back in sooner, because for someone who jumped onto the Game Pass bandwagon on PC mid last year, from even that point when the PC library was about barely 10 games, I think, when it all first came out. I saw the promise from that point, and it's grown substantially now on the PC platform.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
One thing
and with lots of indies as well, actually. And not only that, you've now got Xbox first-party titles that came to PC first, as in Gears Tactics and Flight Sim, that haven't come to the console. Well, obviously Gears Tactics has, but we're still waiting for Flight Sim. So yeah, there's a lot of love being shown to the PC with that.
So it is showing, for someone who's tried it on PC, it's showing its promise, and I've seen what it's capable of and what it will be able to deliver in the future. And I can only ever see Microsoft, because I've seen it from when, at least on PC, from when Game Pass only had, say, 10 titles, and now it's got over 100 on PC alone. I can see the potential. I've seen so many new games on there which I've always either wanted to try or not had time to try. And then obviously they fall by the wayside. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, I can actually jump into these things. But then, for me, because someone who didn't have an Xbox One, there are a load of console games, console-only titles, which are on Game Pass, which I can't play. And I'm really looking forward to getting a Series X, not just for the new stuff coming out, but knowing that I can jump into that old back catalogue as well. And I think that's almost a bonus in Microsoft's book, at least at this point in time, because, again, people like myself who are jumping back again to an Xbox, at least as your first system out of the two, it's not, even if there aren't any big system sellers for either platform, that big library of Game Pass titles sitting there waiting for you, you can catch up. This is your time to catch up and see what Xbox is all about. What you saw, kind of the things like Rise and all that kind of stuff, which you can now play on the Series X, as well as all the newer titles which came to Game Pass, Sea of Thieves and all the other ones. And then we can all begin to look forward to what next gen really has to offer. Again, for either platform, at least by this time next year, we will start seeing the first of many kind of, this is what next gen is about.
Well, fun enough, that's what this first topic's all about. I just want to welcome to the chat, Book of X. Thank you. Welcome for being here. Adam C, Marion the Mad. Welcome to the chat, people. It's great to see you here. I normally do this at the end of the show, normally because I forget to do it any sooner. But if you're new to the show and you like what you're hearing, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help out the channel. Hitting the like button, actually, believe it or not, gives us a positive favor with the algorithms on YouTube, and it pushes our channel onto people's sort of suggested watch lists. So people that may not necessarily be subscribed to the channel, but obviously like Xbox chat and things like that, it does actually help push that. And that's the same for every channel. Wandering Dutch has got his own channel. Every time, and I'm just as guilty, to be honest, of not hitting that like button. But it really does mean the world to us, and it does make a difference. So would be very grateful for that. Pucks, what's going on in the chat, just very quickly?
Well, a lot of people sympathising with SX2, whose system unfortunately crashed. A number of comments I've seen. Assassin Looper says a very valid point. So that every bit of new tech is always going to have some issues. Unfortunately, it's inevitable. And people obviously do just need to deal with it. Was their comment, which is true.
I guess the only trouble with that is obviously if this had been 6 months' time, then Scott could probably take it back to the retailer or whatever, and he'd probably be having a new one on winging its way over to him as we speak. But because it's such limited stock at the moment, my fear would be like, when the hell am I going to see the replacement or the repaired one?
Yeah, another comment here from was a 55. Sorry, that stood out to me. Was that they've seen a number of people on Twitter with PS5 issues, and does anybody think this is a cause for concern? And I think, well, my short answer is it's annoying. I mean, maybe because, again, from my opinion on this, I think social media has grown a lot since the initial launch of the PS4 and Xbox One. So I think these become a lot more vocal sooner now than I think they would have done back in 2013. So these things unfortunately do happen with launch systems, and has been the way since, I think, probably near the beginning of gaming, right? So consoles, I mean, at least. So I think this is, from my opinion at least, is that I think it's just more noticeable now because people are now more vocal on Twitter in today's world. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, obviously I replied to that in the private chat there, but I just put my opinion. Initially, it's a concern, but I think that's down to the fact that developers are still kind of getting used to these systems anyway. People have to realize that, granted, Sony's used to pushing out quality, but they also need to know the limits of their system and what they can and can't do, and how much they can push it. Now, of course, they've implemented, especially on Miles Morales, which is causing quite a lot of issues, primarily one of the games that's causing the most issues. Demon's Souls, I think I've only seen one where it keeps crashing at a certain boss.
One of the problems that Sony have, and I think they're going to face this generation potentially, it's one that Microsoft went to great lengths to avoid, was consistency for the devs. Because depending on your system, the consistency of the clock speeds between the CPU and GPU and stuff can vary quite a lot. And I think the devs are going to struggle with that, even with the SSD. One of the reasons the SSD, Microsoft went with the SSD that they did, and it's quite expensive, is the fact that they went for consistency, and you're going to get a consistent throughput no matter the temperature, because the transfer rates on SSDs are coefficient to the temperature. And I think Microsoft went to great lengths to make sure they got a very consistent speed, so the devs knew that the game on their test rig is pretty much what you're going to be getting on your home console. I'm not sure Sony have gone down that route.
No, that's exactly what I've said. I think initially they might have to patch some of these games to reduce quality on certain aspects. Especially, like I say, and like you mentioned, it's the both variable frequencies and the SSE speeds that they've got there. Now, to maintain such speeds, you generally, especially on the PC space anyway, these SSDs of such high speed usually have to have their own dedicated heatsink.
Yep.
Now, we know the heatsink in the PS5 is ginormous. It's absolutely humongous, and that's probably one of the reasons they included that, as well as just obviously helping out with the system heat overall, but also to counteract the sheer kind of speed and heat that comes off the SSD when it is transferring data at such a rate. But I think therein lies the problem itself, is that you need consistency from the machine, and the inconsistencies are going to really kind of cause issues for the developers on the early stages until they've got to grips with it. As great as these developers are, they will have teething problems. Again, same for Xbox, and it goes without saying for all next-gen equipment. In the early days, especially the first 3 to 6 months, you're going to see those issues until they get either patched out or updated or anything like that, and devs start to get used to what they can do or throttle back certain things to make sure it performs better. Because at the end of the day, we got these machines because not only are we going to be getting higher fidelity games, but also the performance of those games is drastically increased. I mean, you're talking double of frame rates compared to what we had last gen.
Yeah.
That is no mean feat.
No, exactly. And if, and the resolution combined with that is a huge deal.
Yeah.
SuperGav87, welcome to the chat, my friend. Has anyone played Ori with that 6K 60 mode? Yes, it is fantastic. And I also managed to finish The Tourist as well. Absolutely fantastic. Love that to bits. Right, we're gonna have a little bit of fun now. Now, I don't know how many next gen games you've actually tried on your system yet, VJ, but chat as well. This is about how next gen is next gen. I know you've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Just talk us through, some of the more amazing points that you found in that game. Then, Dutch. I mean, what about this next gen has blown you away so far? And let's face it, we're not even a week in yet.
So far for me, and I mentioned it at the start, it's the sheer speed in which, I mean, the one thing that keeps blowing me away is normally my TV kicks in. My console's been unplugged all day, of course, because obviously they changed the room around and things like that. But my console is unplugged, completely like stone cold dead. Turned it on, it's already on the dashboard and ready to jump into a game before the TV comes on.
Oh, I've said that to other people. I've said my console boots up faster than my TV, and my TV's 1 year old, and it boots up. And like you say, by the time my TV's come ready, the dashboard's there ready and waiting for me. It's like, wow.
It's absolutely nuts. But then the game as well, like the game, like two of the games, Valhalla didn't, but the other two games that I had paused, which was Tetris and Falconeer, those both quick resumed straight away, even though the console's been unplugged literally since yesterday.
Well, I've not played Falconeer. What does that play like?
Oh, that is a very quick and smooth game. Obviously, it's 120 frames a second, isn't it? So
yeah.
And that's at 4K.
Very nice.
So it's very smooth. But yeah, I mean, primarily for me, the biggest bonus is. And you can't go back to a 1X or a previous gen console after feeling it, is just the sheer speed at which everything is done, how smooth everything feels, how smooth the gameplay feels at 60 frames.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not going into graphical fidelity because, again, I believe, and I've always been a kind of champion for that, is games can look as beautiful as they want, but I'm all about the art direction of that game as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't care whether or not it's something that's hyper-realistic or whether or not it's something like The Tourist, which has voxel artwork, and that is beautiful as well.
Yeah.
Or whether or not it's, again, we haven't got it yet, but Minecraft with ray tracing on. I mean, that is a substantial difference compared to what Minecraft was without it. But the art is in the eye of who really loves kind of gaming as a whole. So to me, it's about the kind of fluidity of that game, how well that game performs, never mind how good it looks.
Yeah.
That to me is the big wow factor for me, is just how quickly these machines are performing and how quickly we're getting into games and getting from A to. I mean, I've seen Forza Irwin went on did a fast travel on these Forza Horizon before. What would usually take quite a while to fast travel from, probably about 15 to 20 seconds to fast travel from one area of the map to the other, took them not even 2 seconds.
It's ridiculous, and like you say, we're going to get used to this very quickly, I think. But
Yeah.
I mean, my experience, I've got Valhalla, and just the smoothness of the 60 frame. I mean, that's only a 60 frames a second game compared to obviously the 120s and stuff. And I've been playing a few 120 games, but just the graphical fidelity of it. And the thing that stood out for me with Valhalla was the foliage as you're running around. There's just so much grass and stuff. Just I've not really experienced that in a game before, to be honest.
And the draw distance as well. The draw distance is vast.
The really strange thing is you'll go in a room or a hut or a cave or something, and you'll do whatever in there. And by the time you've come out, you get that wow factor again. You've kind of forgotten how beautiful this game looks by the time you've kind of been in a room and come back. And I get that wow factor every time I step outside in Assassin's Creed and some of the sunsets and stuff, man. I'll put a video up on the channel and some screenshots on my Xbox Live Gamer tag and stuff, but they don't really do it any justice. Unfortunately, although it says it's recording in HDR, HDR doesn't seem to make it over to YouTube for some reason. I don't know if I need to master it in a slightly different way. But
no, it's from this is the one thing I hope to patch in very quickly. When you're downloading those clips from I was recording straight onto an SSD. That's a bit different then.
Yeah, so I was a little bit surprised that wasn't working. But and Call of Duty, Cold War, running at 120 frames a second, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. As is Gears 5. But VJ, what's your next gen experience so far? And is it a positive one?
I think I have to talk to. I mean, we've been through so many. Well, I have an old man, but I think the sense of I think what's on display from an overall perspective, flat. First off, is the achievements of the human brain are quite remarkable, right? Compared to thousands of years ago, if not even just a few years ago. I'm not an artist or a coder yet. Some of us can see and or appreciate the math involved in creating such a set of systems. And I'm saying all of this because I can't really tack on much to what Wandering Dutch has already said. So if not, what I am even more surprised about, and as you said, we're always going to have complaints at the beginning of a generation, then I think it's the price tag at which this incredible set of hardware systems are on offer to you and I. I think that's nothing less than staggering, with the caveat, of course, as and when, and sympathies, obviously, as and when systems are more freely available and work properly. As I've said many times, technology has its place, but fundamentally not so important to me. It's a means to an end, and I think that may be the same what Dutch is saying in terms of, hey, look, I don't really care what the game looks like. It's in terms of, it doesn't even matter what the art direction is. In terms of how does it engage me, and how and like I'm playing Gears of War Ultimate Edition, is it? But from time to time, I still have this the lingering love for what the experience that I had with Ghost of Tsushima. It's not going away. And I'm thinking, you know what, when I get my PS5, that'll probably, regardless of whatever the games are at, that'll probably be the first one I boot back up again. It's all down to how creators of content can capture our imaginations and keep us engaged. So, as I say, I welcome the advancement, but it's more to recognize, for me, especially someone who's sort of been in and around the industry, the creator's insight, the forward planning that goes into something like this, the calculation, imagination, intuition, flair, resilience, and determination, and above all, creative genius. And I can go on and on and on, right? But you kind of get the gist of where I'm going with this. These are just some of the building blocks that provide us a very special pastime or hobby, while it forms a critical part of history and our evolution, right? And you only have to go far back as, finding drawings on walls and stories by the fire and rolling dice, and as we once did, right? And we found joy in that. And I think that last week, especially, and even now, I think we're still in that that sort of phase of celebrating, regardless of the inflammatory topics that we talk about. We've all got strong opinions on certain things, and we've got disagreements and so on and so forth. But that's the whole point, right? But as I said to you, besides that, in terms of your specific question, I'm just enjoying everything in a really good spirit, regardless of what games or what system or whatever, regardless of that. And as Boone would say, regardless of the flag you fly, right, as he would put it. So yeah, that's all really that I've got to say. And I will say that I'm really looking forward to Cyberpunk, but I think I'll just stop there flat before I go off topic.
Yeah, me too. I hope it doesn't get delayed again. I know there was some rumours around that, but apparently that's been squashed now. The fact that it might get delayed yet again. But Puxley, so from someone that doesn't currently own the system, I mean, what's your perspective? Because obviously it's all very well, early adopters and journalists and people given consoles to review and stuff. However biased they may be one way or the other. What's your take on it now that it's landed with the general populace? And are you just if not more excited, or is it kind of what you expected?
It's everything I've seen and heard about both systems is basically what I've expected. I've heard nothing but fantastic reviews for either system. Obviously, really looking forward to jumping back into the Xbox ecosystem again since my 360 days. Obviously, rekindled it with the PC, and I kind of remembered how much I loved these old games. And I even remember going through the Xbox console companion app on PC, and I can see my past achievements. And I can, it doesn't take long to scroll down the list until I start seeing this massive list of 360 titles, which I think, oh man, I love these games. And then I realized that actually a lot of these are, now on Gamepass, or you can buy really cheap on the stores now as well. And I'm thinking, oh wow, I can't wait to jump back in. But I mean, similar to what Vidya just saying there, though. I mean, I think what PS4 has managed to do this generation is, if you like single player story driven experiences, like I personally love those types of games. A PlayStation for the PS4 era was a fantastic time to jump in, and games like Ghost of Tsushima. I mean, personally, I plan to finish it on the PS4. Because it's such a massive game. I have no real plans to really play it again anytime soon, even on a PS5. I mean, at least I wouldn't try to complete it again. I'll probably build it up at some point if I do get a PS5 in the future. But I think what's interesting is that either console kind of seems to, almost targeting completely different types of games, if that makes sense. Of course, you've got the third parties, which will cover everything, and obviously you've got your Call of Duties and all the rest of it. But it's what the first parties are doing, I think, is going to sell you either system. And for me, when I've watched more recently, at least, when I've, the May and July Xbox showcases, for example, there was so many games on show, which I thought, oh man, this is a great time to jump back to Xbox. There's so many new IPs, or, kind of IPs being, what's the word? Kind of
Everwild's one that you've got your eye on, isn't it?
Oh, Everwild. We don't even know what it is, and I'm so excited for the game because I loved Sea of Thieves, and I kind of have a lot of hope that, the developers will put their good spin on what I believe this title will become. But for the most part, when I've watched the Sony showcases so far, apart from Ratchet and Clank, there's nothing at the moment that's been on show which is really selling the system to me. I mean, again, I know there's a lot of great things being said about the controller, and to be fair, there's a lot of YouTube videos and stuff about PlayStation 5 controller versus the Xbox One, and how the Xbox One is no different to the Xbox One controller.
Yeah.
It's a bit confusing saying it all, right? But then what I found interesting is that everybody is, wetting their pants over the DualSense, the different triggers and stuff. And yeah, granted that it's new. It's the first time Sony's done it, and it is a more advanced version of what we currently have. But I can't help but look back at it and think, well, the Switch has had its own HD Rumble feature since 2017, and that is very good. Granted, a lot of games, however, don't even implement a damn thing. So I'm not convinced that outside of first parties that the DualSense kind of extras aren't just a gimmick yet. I think it's going to take some time to see.
I agree because the Xbox One had the rumble triggers, I'm not sure that's utilized particularly well amongst the third parties.
But this is the other reason why I'm not sure if people are kind of singing and dancing about the DualSense. But again, I mean, the Xbox One had the whole rumble triggers and the analog stick thing since the launch in 2013. So part of me is going to look at this thinking this isn't new. Like this isn't the first time a company's doing this. So why are people in love with it so much? But again,
a couple of things. A, it's Sony. I think there's a bias already straight away. In my personal opinion, that's free to be challenged. But B, I think it is unlike something we've had before because there is resistance in those triggers and stuff. I know the haptic feedback side of it is, like you say, has been done on the Switch and stuff, but to have resistance in those triggers now, it's been used, particularly in Astro's Playroom and things like that, is kind of new in my opinion. I've not tried it. I think it's perhaps one of those things you absolutely have to try before you can have a sort of a conclusive opinion.
Things I agree with that. In that it's probably, I don't disagree at all that it's probably an evolution as, that what was in the Xbox One controllers back from 2013. And you say Astro's Playroom, I've had lots of good things about the game on its own, let alone the fact that it helps sell you the controller. But again, Astro's Playroom, as much as it is a built-in but relatively expensive game, at the end of the day, it is just a glorified tech demo, in my opinion. As much as I want to play the game, I'm not dissing the game at all. I think it looks fantastic, but it is a glorified tech demo. And I can't help but feel that most developers probably won't invest too much time to make it feel right, if you get what I mean. Because especially if you're a third-party developer and you're trying to, optimize your system for as much as you can. I mean, you want to, because reusability in hardware and software is a big thing, right? You don't want to have to write specific stuff, all loads of specific code for each and every system. You try to reuse as much of it as you can to be a centralized code base, for example. So, I mean, only time will tell. This is just speculation, but I'd like to hope that people buy into it so it kind of helps sell the PlayStation. Not anyway. But
I think a lot of indie games will have fun with it. I think they'll utilize it in weird and wonderful ways, like the indie titles do or indie devs do. Like you say, perhaps big third-party titles. Is Activision and Call of Duty really going to maximize the DualSense? Probably not, in all honesty. And FIFA. And is that the sort of the biggest games that most people or lots of people play? Yeah. So, like you say, it's a bit of an odd one, isn't it? But,
yeah, and to quickly go back to the question of what's my take on it? Because as someone who doesn't have it, I mean, I'm still very much excited for it, and I know I've advocated it since probably since we started the channel.
Series X, you mean?
Yes. But it's the Game Pass for me has really shown how games could change. I know there's a lot of talk in the industry, and people disagree with this, of course. That are subscriptions the future or not? We don't know yet. But for me, as someone, again, I'm an adult now, not a kid anymore. I have to work and earn money and pay bills as well as do other life stuff before I can always play a game. So it is, I do like knowing that investing into something like Game Pass, it's great for me I can just pick a game, especially if it's a short indie game, right? Or something you can just jump into very quickly, do a level or two and stop if you haven't got a lot of time. It's those kind of things which I think has been really beneficial for me for the last couple of years, especially when it comes to indie titles, because they're short anyway. And I've really enjoyed knowing that I can just find an indie game on Game Pass, which I may have seen, not have the time to try, and jump into it. I know there's been talk about, next gen games, no matter what, are going to be £65-70, whether you do or don't invest in Game Pass. An Xbox game's going to cost the same, right? But I think that's just the way the world works. Games are getting bigger. Investment has to be recouped from somewhere. The best place to do that, upgrade the price. We talked about this before, but I still like knowing that I haven't got to worry for the most part. For every new game I want to play, I've got to fork out, £60-70 every time just to maybe try it. It's quite nice knowing that I'm already paying into a service and knowing that I'm going to get all these a lot of third-party titles on there as well. So that's kind of what's drawing me in, and I'm still excited for it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I'm really excited for you to experience it as well, because I know you game on PC and stuff. And so, well, I've got a game in PC, but there's just something about a console that PC does certain things in a certain way, and they do certain things better in a certain way. But just the ease of use with the console and the fact that, it's a purpose-built machine for games and stuff. There's just something about a games console that ticks my box that perhaps PC doesn't in lots of ways. But and I know you feel a similar way, and I know you've moved on to PC gaming and stuff. But I think you're going to really love the Series X as and when you get your hands on it.
Well, no, I agree with that, because I think, as we said before, I mean, I can say about you can pay $2,000 worth of parts to build an equivalent system. But at the same time, a PC isn't just a gaming machine if you don't want it to be. It's also your productivity, creative machine, or it's just your social media machine. It could be anything, but you haven't got to pay $2,000 to have a social media machine, put it that way.
No, fair enough. I just want to welcome to the chat Luke Steele. Welcome to being my friend, and the Seer. Always good to have you guys in the chat. We're just going to quickly move on to topic 2, and this isn't going to be a huge one, I don't think, because we're already at an hour and 15. But just going to talk about the next-gen console launch issues, and this isn't particularly aimed at Xbox. And again, Pucks, perhaps we'll come to you first on this one. But Microsoft have mentioned that they've just delivered their biggest console launch to date in many territories around the world. Biggest, as we discussed at the top of the show, biggest launch could be described in many ways. I think Microsoft are using that term as in probably most territories around the world, but there's obviously been issues and stuff. And Pucks, do you think Microsoft have perhaps spread themselves a little bit too thin trying to go for this worldwide launch? And do you think they should have perhaps focused a little more on the territories that they should have prioritized and that they're going to sell more units in?
If Xbox did as well as PlayStation last gen, I'd probably say that they should probably put their focus on the main territories and expand. But given that Xbox was, to put it bluntly, it was struggling, I think, in the last gen compared to PlayStation, and it was picking up traction in the very later parts of its life. So I think from Microsoft's perspective, I imagine Phil Spencer's probably thinking, right, how do we try to big up Xbox as much as we can and try to sell people this system? Well, we try to send it to as many people as we can out the front door, I'd say, is probably the best way to do it.
But the point is, you can either spread yourself thin and try and do a global launch, or you have the same effect, but in a much more narrow band of market.
I think Xbox having the global launch, I think, has brought up a lot more buzz about it. Like we've had all the big launch event and the live streams that Microsoft did. Whereas, already the PlayStation is out in 5 or 6 territories in the world, and I've not really seen any big song or dance about it at all. So I'd like to think that these shows and the big kind of announcements that they've done worldwide, I think have really helped sell it, if I'm perfectly honest. It's made me more excited to see it as well, whereas I've not really seen anything at all from Sony regarding the PlayStation. I mean, I've seen some pictures from, I think, Sony Japan, where they kind of did up one of their shrines or temples, whatever it was, with a load of PlayStation stuff, and I thought that looked really cool. But again,
sounds a bit sacrilegious.
Yeah, a little bit. But point being, I've not seen much of a song and dance about it like I have with Xbox. I think, if anything, they've helped drum up more excitement with a lot of people than the opposite effect. So I'm hoping this would help at least spread the word to more people, so you can get people saying, again, as you say, when it comes to the playground, a lot of people saying, "Oh, Mum, Dad, I want a PlayStation because that's what all my friends talk about." And you go, "Actually, do your friends and you know about an Xbox?" And they go, "Oh, wow, look at all this buzz about an Xbox." So I don't think they have spread themselves too thin. I think it was probably the better thing for them to do, given how they performed last gen.
Yeah, No Elite agrees. He said launching globally is the best Xbox decision in his opinion. VJ, do you think launching globally was a good move for Microsoft? And do you think that obviously they've still got a lot of what's the word? Lots of orders still to fulfill in sort of Europe I say Europe, in the UK and US and places like that. Do you think they should have perhaps concentrated a little more on those territories?
I personally didn't have a problem purchasing the Series X. Only Xbox could tell you now, with hindsight, if they would have preferred to stagger the console, or on the other hand, maybe they wanted the worldwide launch headline to sort of boost the standing of the brand and the corporate image, and they wanted to keep the global community narrative matters to us, no one left behind narrative, right? That's it. Kind of all dovetails into what are the key components of their PR and marketing strategy from the outset, and then everything from games, from their spiel, from their PR, everything has to dovetail. Otherwise, what the gaming community is like, especially on the other side of the fence. They're very eager to sort of unravel any thread, right? Even if there isn't one, right? Basically. So I think the oratory and the headlining, eloquence, and the messaging had to remain the same. But again, only Microsoft can tell you that. Sony, I know we're not really talking about Sony, but they've gone with the classic, like Nintendo did with the Switch, right? Classic treat them mean and keep them keen approach. And Sony, that they were the first ones to pull out of E3, right? And everybody was having a go at them. And they pulled out of other events. They were one of the first to say, look, we're keeping our staff at home and so on. So I think that sort of saying that we haven't seen photos and people holding their machines high outside of stores. Well, the situation, right, around the world. So they probably, don't want to really sort of contradict the way that they've been approaching the whole pandemic, if you see what I mean. So but then again, going back to Sony and Nintendo, you know, they do take on that sort of mantra of when you're told you can't have something, or you're going to be delayed in having it until much later on in the future potentially, then you only proceed or want to desire that object of desire even more so.
Well, that's the thing, and they did that with the PS3, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, you know Sony very well, right? They're an electronics company. They know how to sell hardware. I think in this instance, Xbox have got everything to basically do this time around. So it kind of takes me back to what John Lineman was saying, his tweet, that next gen consoles launches should be delayed. And he was obviously privy to information that he couldn't part with at the time. And even I said that it just feels like Sony aren't ready, and Microsoft may be ready. But I think with people are talking about, you know, the launch titles and so on and so forth. Again, you know, would a couple of extra months really have helped them to stockpile hardware, make sure that these games weren't as, look, I'm not a technical guy, so, you know, I'm just sort of just being a layman here, would, you know, ironed out some of these issues that we're having, you know, in some of this crazy stuff we're seeing on Twitter. The launches were, in hindsight, a little bit premature, as both companies simply did not have enough or sufficient units flat to have a, like, maybe more of an orderly, and I think maybe a more inclusive, and then that, what does that beget? That begets sort of a more celebratory sort of like event, right? And I think that kind of is missing for me. Just listening to seeing what's happened to SX2, he's not the only one, and it doesn't make it any easier, right? Even if he's a part of a group, right? It just seems it's taken something away, right? Sony for sure was short on hardware, and you know why, right? And I think I covered this on a podcast where I was explaining that up until the end of the second quarter, components and so on and so forth were up to 4 times the amount of the traditional cost, and Sony just weren't prepared to pay it. And it was only until the beginning of June, or the end of June, sorry, the beginning of July, when everything went back to normal in terms of component costs, as well as production output as well, back in China. So obviously that's had a factor, right? Because we were hearing that these machines were supposed to be being manufactured as far back as April, especially considering what Jim Ryan was saying, that they'd actually planned, that most of the team and the corporation was actually thinking about next gen and the launch plans in the previous year. So you know, it's like, well, what's happened then? If you were thinking about that far back, how have you got it so wrong? So anyway, look, I don't know. So I'm just sort of just giving you my opinion of what I've seen and what I've heard said. I can only surmise, right? I don't work for them. So it's right now, it kind of feels I feel a bit bad, because it's kind of like those that have and those that have not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then that kind of is not good, because, as I said, the gaming has become more and more a community thing, right? Rather than sort of being a hobbit and playing games in a cave by yourself. So I believe, and just as you guys were talking, and I was just about to try to order a pair of headsets so I could run community gaming night. So I believe no matter what Xbox and Sony did or tried to do, we would have ended up in a slightly distasteful, I'd say, predicament of shortages and disgruntled customers. I'm certain both would have liked to have had a more suitable and settled launch. However, you know, the preceding months and with the pandemic, the previous months, it's been difficult, and I'm hoping that in the preceding months that they do sort of are able to resolve not just the situation with hardware availability and things going wrong with that, but as Dutch was alluding to, you know, being able to patch these games if that's possible, to make the whole experience more worthwhile. And that's where I think Game Pass for me is great, because there's a lot of games that I've missed out on, and those games have no issues. If anything, they have enhancements. So I'm as happy as pig in Chardonnay, shall we say.
Well, that's good. And like you say, you know, you've come to Game Pass and perhaps the Xbox brand after probably a fair chunk of being away from it at a great time, because like you say, all you need now is lots of time. To be able to catch up. Dutch, you know, there's been lots of issues and stuff. Where do we point the finger? Do we point the finger at Mark? I am taking into account, obviously, the very, very difficult year that we've had this year globally, and you say I mean, you know, everyone on the planet. But you know, it seems like retail screwed up quite a lot, and I'm just wondering where where that problem or issue should sit? Should that sit with the platform holders? Should they have done an element of due diligence to make sure these retailers' servers are gonna survive and give the customer a good experience, or is it nothing to do with the platform holders?
Oh, I don't think it's got anything to do with the platform holders. I think you've got to also take into account. I mean, outside of mobile phones, this is one of the only industries where you can sell a premium product at 500 on a launch day, and it be absolutely sold out to the brim with millions of consoles sold worldwide. There's not many. I mean, you'll not see there's like a brand new PC getting released on day one, and everyone goes and buys it, because it doesn't happen. A new TV comes out.
Well, it kind of happens with the cards, doesn't it? The Nvidia cards.
It does. It's
not to the same scale, though.
Yeah, nowhere near the set or the same quantity either. You tend to find, of course, they're cards as opposed to systems. If you have a look for any system with 3090s, 3080s, 3060s, kind of implemented, that they're freely available for anybody to buy. Again, going into separate components, if you're looking for an SSD, a certain sized SSD separately, again, it's a different matter altogether. However, these consoles have them and those systems have them, and they're freely available to buy. Down the one key issue that I think they had this launch that contrasted severely compared to last launch was the distributors majorly messing up everything, and that didn't just go for Xbox but also PlayStation. We've seen, of course, the distribution being pushed back across the board from several distributors, whether it be Microsoft Direct using UPS or DHL, depending on where you are, or whether it be from other stores, Shop2 or Argos or anything like that. In the UK, or Best Buy in the US. The distribution was just an absolute mess from top to bottom. For instance, I had two on order, one for myself and one for my best mate, but he was getting one for his kid for Christmas as well as just himself, so it was a kind of a double whammy. But that one, even though Amazon have a cut-off delivery point of 10 o'clock at night, was pushed back. It originally said it was coming the next day as opposed to launch day, and then came 9:45 at night, so very late in the evening. And then I know somebody else who received their Series X, which was about 11:15 at night, which is insane in itself. But again, some people still haven't got the Series X, even though they got it pre-ordered before launch. Wow. Some people got it the next day. It's just the distribution this time around was an absolute catastrophe.
There's lots of issues, and there's lots of links in the chain for it to go wrong as well, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's got anything to do with Microsoft. I think Microsoft will probably be having a go at the distributors, because let's face it, every one of these distributors have had these units in their warehouses ready to ship to the buyer for launch day. That is the instructions that they're given by Microsoft. Here's all the units, get them ready. Don't release them to the customers until launch. But they still managed to mess that up. And it's the same every year. Of course, this year, it just went ridiculous. Like I say, some people still haven't received them. Shom on our podcast, because of where he lived, even though he pre-ordered his pretty much the same minute as me, got his a day later. But I think units-wise, worldwide, Xbox did in their plan, they'd rather release worldwide, and that's fine. They didn't complain at all about shortage of units, and haven't said we're not going to get units in this year. We're saying, right, okay, we're working with retailers. We're going to get as many units as we possibly can to you before Christmas. There will be some available before Christmas, so keep an eye out. PlayStation have pretty much flat out come out and said the opposite. It's unlikely we're going to get that many more units, if any, before kind of the new year, to kind of ship out to people. And I think that's also in contrast to the fact that they still have to get those units to the European markets. They've only done Asian and American. They haven't done European yet. They've got a whole nother wave of this stuff to come. And I think that's where they're concentrating all their firepower at, because they've had the units ready for the first market. Now they have to get the units ready for the second market. And I think that's going to be their issue, whereas Microsoft could go, right, okay, these are all of the units for the worldwide release. They're out, they're ready to go. This is for everybody who's pre-ordered for day one, have got their console, or it's on the way to being delivered.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Sony have taken a slightly different approach with the staggered launch around the global sort of markets and stuff. And like you say, perhaps that's going to work in their favour. I mean, I'm not sure they did it for these very reasons, to be honest. But it looks like it is, and perhaps they've had a chance to perhaps either learn from Microsoft's errors or perhaps the retailers' errors selling the Microsoft stuff, and also obviously the PlayStation ones.
But these, you've got to think as well. Another kind of side note: these individual, even though there might be large kind of conglomerate sites over here like Game and Argos, etc., they're nowhere near the same scale as the likes of Microsoft, etc. And even though they had a little bit of lag on their side when pre-ordering came, it still worked. It didn't crash. Whereas these other sites just ground to a halt, and that's because their servers aren't to the capacity of Microsoft.
But
and likewise for Sony.
But one of the issues I take is obviously Microsoft partnered with Smith Game and Smith's Toy, and Game, as in delivering all access, and that kind of really didn't work whatsoever. And I personally feel that Microsoft should have possibly done their due diligence just to make sure. And also in the UK it was Klarna, I believe, wasn't it, that were the financiers behind all access and stuff, and that went completely wrong. Puxley, again, from someone who's experienced this firsthand, where do your frustrations lie? Do they sit with Microsoft or do they sit with the retailer?
I don't know if they really sit with either, if I'm perfectly honest, because again, it's more. I know we keep talking about the past and how it was not a great start for Xbox in 2013 and whatever else. So I'm not going to keep repeating that, but I think it was a lot of those lessons. I imagine no matter how much hype a company can build and how much suspected hype you see online, I mean, you don't really know who's really going to invest in your system until launch day, right? I mean, because pre-orders do and don't count at the same time. They give you a good metric as to how many people want the system, but I don't think it's until actual launch day when who cancelled their Series X order or Series S orders. You don't. Obviously, this is all in a system somewhere, but I think both companies probably have to be quite careful with how many they manufacture, because I think the last thing they want is for one of them systems to potentially flop. And then they've got a massive warehouse of units and money lost.
I don't think that would ever happen, would it? I think the market...
No, not this time round. But again, you never know. I imagine it's still one of those things. I imagine from a business perspective was probably maybe we shouldn't make too many yet, and we'll see what happens, I guess.
Well, perhaps more from a hardware perspective, because obviously Microsoft have had their fingers burnt with the Xbox 360 and the Red Ring of Death and stuff. So, and perhaps if there is a hardware issue that's perhaps causing some of these units to fail, then like you say, you don't want to stick all of your eggs in one particular basket. It might be better to stagger and have various revisions and versions being manufactured and stuff to absolutely correct any little minor issues, even if it's down to a component or something like that. Perhaps.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm pretty sure we saw that with the Xbox One, and we definitely did with the PS4. I mean, I didn't jump into last gen, as it officially is now, PS4, until 2015. And by that point, at least even the externals of the system looked a bit different than the 2013 PlayStation 4. So I can only imagine we're going to see a similar similar kind of minor tweaks and changes as we move forward. Not necessarily in the physical design up front, but at least under the hood, we're also going to see changes on the circuit boards and all the rest of it just to correct those issues. So yeah, my frustrations of it don't really lie with either, mainly because I can understand the potential business reasons behind why you would produce so many, but my frustrations now are just not knowing when the next batches are coming in.
Well, I suspect that you don't know that purely because Microsoft don't know that. I don't think there's any business reason to hold that information back, perhaps other than it might be coming after Christmas, which might upset a lot of people, or if the fact that PlayStation might be getting another batch sooner than Xbox, they might want to hold back that information that actually we're not going to have any this side of Christmas. But
I mean, I've kind of resigned, unfortunately, myself to the fact that I most likely won't end up with the system at least until after Christmas, but that's not going to stop me from putting a few Series X titles on my Christmas lists because I know I'm going to jump into it. I know I'm going to be getting one.
That's interesting. Well, what title? Okay, let's go with that then. What would you put on your list?
Well, from a Xbox perspective,
Yeah, go on.
definitely Valhalla is probably on there. Call of Duty is probably on there.
Hmm.
You know what? I'm put on the spot now. Cyberpunk is probably going to be on there.
Yeah.
What else is coming out?
My point being though is they're cross-platform.
Yes, yeah, I know. So I'm quite looking forward to knowing I can jump in. Even from a PlayStation perspective, and the only real PlayStation game I'm looking forward to is Sackboy: The Big Adventure. And I've even seen that if I buy the digital version on the PS4 store, that if I do end up with a PlayStation 5 in the future, I get the free upgrade anyway.
Yeah.
So it's quite nice knowing that either system really kind of doing like a next gen ready kind of system, process, if you get what I mean. But yeah, I've got a number of titles because I know I want the system. I know I'm going to jump into the ecosystem, and it's just a case of when.
Yeah, and that's the frustration because I want to play games with you and stuff like we used to. We I was playing Call of Duty Mr. Tucci the other day, and it's like, we absolutely need Puxley here right now. But,
I'm looking forward to jumping in. Yeah.
No, that's cool. We've got a few extra people in the chat. Welcome, Fastback, Fun Speculation. You're back. Welcome back to the chat, my friends. Let's go. So let's move on to a third and final topic, if we can, and we'll go to you, VJ, if you don't mind. So this is around, EA Plays come to Game Pass, and I had this the wrong way round in my head. It was only when I was researching it, but the ZeniMax Studio acquisition was actually announced on the 21st of September, as far as I can see online. And then the EA Play coming to Game Pass was actually announced afterwards. I thought it was the other way around. It looks like the EA Game Pass announcement came on the 29th of September. And because of the ZeniMax, thing, to be honest, the EA coming to Game Pass kind of got overshadowed a little bit. And I know, Puxley, you are an advocate of EA Play coming to Game Pass, and I completely understand why, because there are lots and lots of casual players that like EA games, particularly things like FIFA and all of the sports titles and stuff. What do you make of the move of EA coming to Game Pass, Pux? I mean, is it a huge announcement? Is this going to be a system seller for certain people, do you think?
Sorry, you want me to answer this first or VJ?
Yeah, go on. No, you go.
I think it's massive, the EA Play coming to Game Pass, and I think as you said at the beginning, I personally don't think many people are shouting up about how big this really is, because what this is, it's not just about what's on show now, in my opinion. It's about what this will also offer in the future, because EA is a massive company. They develop all sorts of different titles over the as of today and the years to come, and why wouldn't these be going to EA Play? And as an extension of that, they'll be coming to Game Pass via EA Play. Even myself, EA Play is only on console, but because I have Ultimate already anyway, I've actually been trying out a few titles through Game Pass. Through cloud gaming on my phone. And I've been having, unfortunately, not many titles yet are supported by cloud gaming, but I've been able to jump into, like, Mirror's Edge Catalyst, for example, is one of the ones which is supported. I've been playing that on my phone with a controller, and I've absolutely loved it. And I'm looking through the titles thinking, wow, there's a selection of 360 titles here, as well as, pretty recent titles, and some brand new ones. Even kind of big recent titles like Battlefield 5 are on the service. And I think, that's big, because Battlefield is still a massive game, which, has a massive player base. There's a lot of people who love Battlefield.
It looks incredibly pretty as well.
It graphically looks good. You've obviously got the destruction physics in place. The Battlefields, well, it kind of lives up to its name, doesn't it? It's the actual maps are massive, and it is obviously slightly slower gameplay. And a lot of people prefer Battlefield because it's not as fast paced as something like Call of Duty. But if you're happy to jump between both, at least, I think those are big things to shout about. Because if you're arguing between, do you want to get Call of Duty or Battlefield? That's probably a stupid argument, because most people might choose Call of Duty. But if you have Game Pass Ultimate, you don't have to worry about that choice, because one of them you almost get for free anyway.
No, absolutely. And to be honest, you educated me, because because I'm a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, I just assume that if something's coming to Game Pass, it's coming to everything. But no, you corrected me, because the EA Play is only coming to Game Pass Ultimate, which was news to me, if I'm honest.
Yeah, we had this kind of chat in private a few days ago, because obviously you still have the console only and PC only tiers of Game Pass, which obviously don't include Xbox Live Gold and all the rest of it, mainly for the console one. But what I found more interesting is just looking at the price points, because for both the individual console and PC Game Pass tiers now, they're both $7.99 each now, whereas Ultimate is $10.99. And not only does that include your your monthly Xbox Live Gold subscription, you also get all these extra perks as well. But it also not only opens up EA Play, you also get these Xbox Live quests, which I think Ultimate members would have seen. So you get like these Microsoft reward points just for playing games and doing things via Game Pass.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't quite aware why that's a good thing, is because the more you play and get these points, you can then redeem those points for, say,
Cash.
actual cash back, or you can use that to pay for your Game Pass subscription. And I think Mr. Tushi's a good example of this as someone who uses Microsoft Rewards. I'm sure he told us a couple of weeks ago that he doesn't actually hasn't paid for Game Pass himself for the last year because it's all been paid for by his reward points.
Yeah, and Wakanda. Yeah, they both do that.
That's nothing small, I think, to kind of neglect. And I think a lot of people are just unaware that actually these systems are in place, and there's all these extra perks you can get by just paying an extra £2 a month for an Ultimate.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. VJ, do you think EA Play coming to Game Pass is a big deal? I mean, do you play many EA games? Is it something you're going to benefit from?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat everything, repeat in the same way that Puxley's already said, because I think you ask anybody in the street, if you're getting an edition for free and you haven't been able to access Mass Effect, Dead Space, FIFA, PJ, well, not for free, but as part of your ecosystem, that there's no price increase, then who am I to complain, right? There's just absolutely zero complaints. What I actually spoke about this EA Play thing on the 14th of last month on Stubbs Midweek Gaming, and I said on there that it's pretty obvious from what I could ascertain that we're all sort of being carefully led, guided, seduced, or however you want to put it, and fundamentally manipulated into upgrading and transitioning over to Game Pass Ultimate. I am a Game Pass Ultimate, but I'm talking about the people that, as you mentioned, that are on Game Pass console. So Xbox has increased price of Xbox Live Gold, and at the same time made Game Pass console far less attractive, with less content and benefits, basically, to pretty much make both significantly less attractive, if not totally defunct, right? From my perspective, as somebody new going into for a subscription, there's just a clear decision on the menu, so to speak. So, for example, I really can't see any reason, and maybe someone can educate me, because I can't see a reason why console Game Pass those subscribers wouldn't be allowed to access EA Plus Play, other than for the aforementioned reasons. And regardless of the transparency of what they're trying to achieve, to me at least, I can see transparently what they're trying to do. They simply want everyone on board paying the $15. And at the end of the day, you've got to say, from Microsoft's perspective, it's good business, right? Because there hasn't really been an uproar or an issue. But I'm not saying that there should be. We should just be aware of it, and that's very, very important, because it's far bigger issues to be discussing. I personally prefer Pro Evolution Soccer in Game Pass over FIFA, if that has any bearing whatsoever. Dead Space 2 is something, as I said, I've very much loved, especially Part 2. I've downloaded Jedi Fallen Order, which was a game
Me too.
I wanted to play, but I never bought it. But that is specifically because I'm not a Star Wars franchise or movie fan by any stretch of the imagination. I'll be totally honest with you with that. But saying that, I am a fan of the Mandalorian series. So for many, far more than any Star Wars movie to date. I was intending to play the Mass Effect trilogy, but obviously the Legendary Edition's been launched. So I'm going to hold back on that and enjoy some other content. I've spoken with some Series X users, and not a single person has actually mentioned EA Plus to me in any meaningful way, but it does hold a nostalgic, how can I put it, a place in one's heart. But besides Jedi Fallen Order, I would say overall it is a nostalgically sort of flavored addition to Game Pass library. Not quite, it's not quite a pair of sunglasses on a bloke with one ear, but which is something, saying something, right? Especially when it comes to EA, right? And the types of, not just types of games, but in terms of how they're managing their gaming portfolio going forward. And I won't go on flat, because I know you've got some other interesting questions related to this topic.
No, it's a very personalised perspective of it, and like you say, this announcement I think was overshadowed, and I personally think they should have perhaps timed the announcement a little bit better to perhaps have maximum impact, because I think it got lost and swept up in the foray that kind of was the ZeniMax buyout. So it's a little bit of a shame, and I think it's perhaps because of that gone under a lot of people's radar. Dutch. What game was there? Any games on EA Play that you've not yet played that you're looking forward to picking up?
I was already a subscriber of EA Access before it
Okay.
changed. So to me, it was a case of it saved me money because I have one less subscription I need to pay for. I don't believe it's great for people who haven't played anything that's in the vault currently, but I think Microsoft really should have pushed it out with EA and got the EA Play Plus or whatever it's called on PC, where you get games day and date.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question, really, and that's kind of a good link because where do we think could it go in that direction? Do you think?
It depends on the success of how many. I think if EA see how many titles are being played via Game Pass, they may then kind of want to revise what is going on and the kind of offer that they have, and look to kind of broker a deal to kind of do that. But I think it really depends on the success of what they've now just implemented on the kind of games that were in the vault already. See how well they do, how many more people play them compared to what they did before. If that is a success, then go, yeah, certainly put it in because people will still buy games. Of course, you save 20% anyway on anything that's in Xbox Game Pass anyway. So people will still buy them because they still want to own them, and they get a discount. So there's always bonuses there, and it still applies to any game that's with EA. You'll still get the Game Pass benefits, which is that you'll get that discount if you want to purchase it, and you'll get discounts off DLC. And for those who play FIFA and Madden, etc., buy points all the time, if you're buying points all the time, of course, and you're getting them discounted, that's even more of a bonus.
It's a very good proposition, isn't it? And I'm just wondering, like Game Pass is it's a great proposition. We know that. I'm just wondering if it's going to sort of span the gap between. I think we kind of alluded to this earlier before the first party titles turning up for people that are wandering into your local game shop, whether that's Game or GameStop, depending where you live, and whether that could be a deciding factor. Pucks, is there anything on EA Play or EA Access that you're interested in that you haven't yet picked up?
Well, Battlefield 5, I'm quite looking forward to jumping into. Even though I didn't get good reviews, I don't believe. I'm quite looking forward to. Again, I've been trying it already on cloud, but Mirror's Edge Catalyst is on there. I'm looking forward to playing. Well, I was looking forward to playing A Way Out, but then my friend bought it in a Steam sale, and you're only one person to own the game, which is quite nice. So I think we've been playing that together on PC, which is quite fun. But I'd like to see it again on console on a Series X, so that'd be quite interesting. There's a few little indies on there, I think, as well. One game called Sea of Solitude I'm quite liking the look of.
Yeah, I saw Indie Gamer had put that on there. I don't remember seeing that on there, so I might have to check that out.
Yeah, it's obviously capitalized, so it's right near the bottom, unfortunately.
Okay.
A lot of people in the chat actually mentioning about Dead Space, and this is a game which has definitely gone under my... I know what it is. I've played like snippets of it.
Me too. I played the demo. You know what? I never got my teeth into that, and I really should.
Yeah, well, you've got 1, 2, and 3 on EA Play, so it's the best time to jump in, I think. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Madden and FIFA on there, but I'm not really a sports games player at all, really. So they don't really float my boat too much. And also, I mean, funnily enough, there's a number of Plants vs Zombies games on there, but obviously the newer games are all like over-the-shoulder third-person shooter type things. And I remember playing Garden Warfare 2 on the PS4 and quite enjoyed that. And they've got the newest one, Plants vs Zombies game on there as well, which looks quite interesting. Obviously, not everyone. It's a very I think very niche type of game to jump into, but they're quite fun actually. I think a lot of people probably overlook them because it's Plants vs Zombies, but they are interesting to play if you just want like a fun little shooter. So I'm quite looking forward to giving that a go on a console as well.
I know you say, I think you mentioned it earlier, VJ, we talk about these things coming for free. And like we've said many times before, Game Pass is such great value that it does feel like you're getting this for free, doesn't it?
That's the psychological conundrum that Microsoft are using to actually capitalize, right? On
they're doing a bloody good job at it. I know that.
Yeah, it's just being aware of it. That's my fundamental issue, right? A lot of people just want to see it. They're looking, but they're not seeing. If that makes sense.
It does, but when you bear in mind, and like you say, on the other side of the fence, if you are paying $70 for a game.
Yep.
Or you can pay $15 for a Game Pass and get all of your day and date, first party titles. We don't need to do this again, but there is a stark difference. I just need to make a special shout out to someone in the chat if I can. He's only just joined. There's a guy in there called Assemble, and he has his own YouTube channel, and it is absolutely fantastic. And he doesn't have anywhere near as many subscribers as he should have. It's absolutely fantastic. Such high production values. He mainly sort of deals in sort of superhero stuff, Marvel bits and bobs, but he does sort of dabble in consoles and stuff like that. Absolutely fantastic. So it's Assemble. He's in the chat as we speak. I will put a link in the description. Please go to his channel and have a look. Like you say, the production values are so high. It's fantastic, and we must get him on the show very, very soon if you're willing. And hi to Gaming Differently with Cerebral Paul as well. I'd like to get you on the show. In fact, yourself and I were on the Stubbs cast, on the midweek Stubbs Gaming podcast, along with obviously VJ and Mr. Tushi a little while ago. But yeah, Pucks, what's going on in the chat while we're there?
Well, a lot of people are agreeing. We're being called out by Dragon Wolf for not having played Dead Space.
Yes. And you know what? He's absolutely right to call
us
out.
100%, 100%.
You know what? This will piss him off as well, but I was new to Titanfall 2. I mean, I only played Titanfall 2 probably 2 months ago, and that was on the back of Mr. Tushi's recommendation.
I've never played either of them. It's just to roll sharp even more.
Well, to my shame, it's one of the best games I've played this year to date. Well, perhaps now with the next gen games being here, it's slipped down the charts slightly, but I love Titanfall 2 so much. It's a fantastic game, and you have to take these people's recommendations seriously because, like I say, if lots of people are saying the same thing about these games, then there's obviously something in it.
Yeah, I've got a comment here actually. The Fun Speculation mentioned earlier, which I think is interesting, and I actually kind of agree with this in a way. So again, they being Microsoft announced the EA Play. So if they had announced it on the day before the console release, it would have been big news. However, they probably didn't want people renewing those EA Play subscriptions. Might have had some backlash about notice. What do you think about EA Play having been announced on the 9th? Do you think that would have made it the big boom that it probably should have been?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, possibly. I just felt that he got all swept up with the ZeniMax news. I just think they should have made more of a deal of it. And I personally think, and a bit like VJ and Dutch alluded to, that I think it appeals to a slightly different gaming market out there. The people that do play FIFAs and perhaps some of the more casual ones. Is everyone desperate to play Plants vs Zombies? No, but it does have a market out there, and the people who buy into this sort of game probably aren't even aware that it's part of Game Pass.
I think the biggest addition as well, obviously being Jedi: The Fallen Order, which is obviously a big AAA game which released just earlier this year, which obviously got a lot of hype, especially if you're a Star Wars fan, and knowing that's now on the platform that you can jump in. I think knowing if those big new games are coming to this is the thing, right? I think with Game Pass as well, there's a number of people I think still out in the wild who think that the service is great, but it's all old stuff. We want new stuff. And of course, these systems are lining themselves up to be a place where when new titles are released, they are coming to the service day one. So, and I'd like to think that's true of EA Play. So I think for a lot of people who maybe still are on the fence about whether you jump into a subscription service like this, I think you're right, partially right to be on the fence still, but I think the potential is there. We're all seeing it as people are using it, right? I think it's just a case of once next gen really kicks in, starting from next year, I think that's when we're going to really start seeing the proper value of these services and why people should buy into it.
Absolutely. We got the Medium coming just after Christmas, and it is a shame that we'll push back, and I think people will be heavily involved in Cyberpunk by then, unfortunately. But there is a thing, if you go on the store, if you go on the new Microsoft store, and depending on what category you're on, if you press X on the controller, you can then it comes up with all the filters, and you can filter things like games with ray tracing, or games that are Series X and S optimized, or games that will run at either 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second. So all of those filters on the game store, and perhaps I'm being a little bit naive here, but I didn't realize that the Medium's actually coming with ray tracing. It actually says on the store that if you do a filter with games with ray tracing, the Medium pops up. I don't know if anyone in the chat was aware that the Medium's coming with ray tracing, or whether it's an error on the store, but I'm really looking forward to that game actually.
Maybe that's why it's delayed.
Yeah, I'd be a bit miffed if it was delayed because of that, but
No, I didn't know that. Interesting.
No, you looking forward to the Medium, VJ?
Yes and no. Yes, because I have an affinity with Poland and stay living over there for a year or so. So anything that comes out of there, they work extremely hard, and I think extremely creative studio, but looking at it more analytically in terms of what they've done in the past, and looking obviously at issues that COVID's had, on various studios and so on and so forth. I'm glad it's a little bit delayed. Not the fact that Cyberpunk was there. I don't think that had a huge issue, but yeah, I think Blooper could potentially have sort of, how can I say it, learnt their trade on the previous titles, and this may be something that actually propels them and make them more of a mainstream household name. So I wish them the best of luck. So if it is in Game Pass, is that right for that?
Yes, it's coming to Game Pass. Yep.
So I will 100%, and I think, and I've said to Indie Gamer as well that the games in Game Pass deserve our time and attention, because a lot of the revenues that these indie developers and games that do go into Game Pass, other than first party games, some of their revenue and some of their future production funding as well, in terms of how much support they get through Idea Xbox or whatever their financial structure is, everything has a bearing. So yeah, I think as a duty that someone who enjoys the gaming industry and just somebody that enjoys games, maybe not as much as Dutch, but it's I think it's important to support these companies as much as possible. There's a lot of competition out there. I mean, it's just mind-boggling the amount of games that are out there. But I think that this particular game definitely does deserve a look.
Yeah, I think Microsoft will try and procure that studio as well. I know there's been lots of rumors about, studio acquisitions and stuff, but I think that would be high on their list, obviously alongside Asobo as well. But yeah, Medium, you excited for that, Dutch? I'm guessing you are. I mean, why wouldn't you be, I suppose?
Yeah, it's I've already got it pre-ordered.
Pre-ordered? It's coming to Game Pass, isn't it?
It is, but I'm getting it anyway.
Huh?
I like the vision of the game. The previous titles were, of course, left a lot to be desired by the studio.
Layers of Fear.
Yeah,
I really like those games. They're real Marmite games, aren't they? Because we were talking to Luke Steele and he didn't like them, but I think they're brilliant. The
problem for me was that there was no consequence to your actions.
They are very much on the rails. Yeah, it's about the experience rather than the game, I suppose.
Yeah, I get that. But no, I'm looking forward to it. Of course, the statement that put out really alluded to the fact that they were trying to avoid Cyberpunk, which is fair, because if you're trying to combat a game that is probably one of the most anticipated games, not only of last generation, because it is 7 years in the making, but off the back of Witcher 3, which is now a TV series, as well as one of the most successful kind of open world RPGs of all time. You would want to avoid such a release. Of course, bearing in mind it also gives them a perfect excuse to polish the game further. So to me, it really doesn't. I don't mind it getting pushed back till January, because I will be playing Cyberpunk.
Yeah, and you're right. Selfishly, we've got other stuff. As a gaming community, we've got other stuff we can be playing in the meantime, I guess. But yeah. Pat's just joined as well. Well, that kind of rounds up the show, to be honest, everyone. I've really enjoyed tonight. Thank you so much for being here. The chat, as always, we've had people coming and going today, which is a little bit unusual. I think people just want to get back to their Series X machines, if I'm honest. And I completely understand why. Thank you very much, chat. Really appreciate you guys being here. It's been a fantastic chat. Hopefully, we've got even more things to talk about next week with regards next generation, because, like I say, we've not even had our teeth sunk into this next generation for a week yet. So there's going to be a few more things. Hopefully, Scott on SX2 will have his machine sorted as well sooner rather than later, and hopefully Stubbs will be feeling better as well. But let's just do a quick round. Puxley, is there anything you need to say before we finish off the show? And where can we find you?
No, I have nothing stand out to say, rather than I hope I can get some Series X soon once those stocks come in and I can actually join the party properly.
Yeah, me too, mate. Yeah, it's just keeping an eye on what Microsoft are doing. And like I say, I think Microsoft probably don't know themselves, and they might be playing a little bit of a cagey game with Sony in case Sony do surprise, a load of extra stock. I've got to be honest, I think I'm going to end up with a PS5 at some point, probably next year. Just be interesting to see some of the first-party titles. Miles Morales is a game I think I'd probably really enjoy, and I missed out on the entire PS4 generation, so I've got an entire generation to catch up.
A lot of good stuff to jump in there. But yeah,
you know what? Ghost of Tsushima enough. Everyone loves that game so much. I feel like I've missed out, to be honest.
Days Gone, Horizon Zero Dawn. You've got God of War, of course. You missed out on.
I played God of War on the PC, strangely enough.
Via
PlayStation Plus. PlayStation Now. PlayStation Now. It was all right. It was an experience. It was nothing like. I actually played it on a PS4 Pro as well. I had a dabble at a friend's house, and it was obviously a completely different experience. But the story for me, God of War is about the story, and I certainly got that.
Yes.
But just to round off, for some new viewers out there, you can obviously find us at Gamepass Gaming on Twitter. We also have a Facebook page as well, Gamepass Gaming, if you want to like us on there, if you want to use that platform. And as for myself, you can find me on Twitter at PuxleyAR.
Excellent. Thank you very much. VJ, what shows have you got coming up? I'm guessing you're doing booms during the week and stubs during the week?
Yeah. I just wanted to say something to Puxley. Is he done himself a disservice there, because he's always got something fascinating and fantastic to talk about and comments to make. So that was the first thing. And I just want to say it was really great to have Wandering Dutch on again. He's probably about the most well-behaved guest we've ever had. And I think it's my second time on the show with him. And Dutch, I'm really sorry. It's sometimes difficult to get on the show with you on a Wednesday. I really want to, but I'm kind of committed onto midweek. And
don't worry about it, buddy.
Yeah, one day hopefully I can get onto your show if the invite's still open.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, he's just unfollowed me on Twitter now. I just saw it. But I always find it now, Flap. It's taken me a while, but I find it a moral duty, as you know, to speak my mind now truthfully, and especially when it's a pleasure to do so as well. And as I said, I'm really, really happy with the Xbox Series X. I didn't find the weight or the size, any issues, whatever, just slotted straight in, and it's pretty much out of the way, and I don't even notice it, to be quite honest with you.
You know what? Well, that's the whole design function of it, isn't it? It's supposed to disappear in your cabinet, but I was actually surprised how big and heavy it was, to be honest. I think in my mind I was expecting it to be not that it's a problem in the slightest, but what it did highlight to me was just how bloody big the PS5 must be, to be honest.
Yeah, potentially. And I actually want to there's no way, I don't know, I'll wait until I get a PS5, but hopefully they've got some swappable plates to hopefully make it less of an eyesore or obscure. I love the design. I think it's fantastic. I have no issues with it whatsoever. And to be honest with you, it really doesn't matter what the machine looks like. We've had some terrible looking consoles in the past, and there's no podcasts or comments relating to the ID design, right, of those things. And Flap, it was. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it today. I've been having a few headaches, quite regularly actually, but it was incredibly wonderful. And there was a few questions we didn't get to, which I thought were really important. But hey, you know what? That's just because the show's so great. And
just as a little bit of background, I actually write the show notes in, I think it's actually called Stickies or something in Windows 10, and they pop up. And as we go through them, I draw lines through them. And you know what? We haven't even scratched the surface of the questions I've written. So you know what, VJ, I think we need to regenerate some of these. And one of the questions one of the topics I want to do is why Europe seems to be at the butt end of both Sony and Microsoft in lots of ways. So that's not a topic for now, because I think that's quite a big topic. But I think Europe doesn't get shown too much love from the big platform holders, if I'm honest. And by Europe, I mean mainland Europe. I think the UK is not so bad. But perhaps we'll cover that on a different day. But thank you for being here, my friend. It's always a pleasure. And I'm pleased you could make it, and I'm pleased you're feeling better. Dutch, you've got your own channel and your own show and your own podcast and your own group of people. Tell us all about those.
Yes, indeed. So, of course, you can find me on both YouTube and on Twitter and Twitch as Wandering Dutch. The show that we have is the Midweek Mix-Up podcast. This week, we have Delilah Studios, the creators of Battletoads on, both the CEO, AJ Grant Stratton, Lucy, who is the art director now for Delilah Studios, and we're also getting one of the, I think it's one of the more technical kind of directors on board as well. So
how are you pronouncing that studio name?
Delilah Studios.
Delilah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have pronounced it like that if I didn't know. That's how they pronounce it, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But no, they to be honest, they're very open to kind of talking about the game, very straightforward. Really nice guy as well, AJ. Of course, I just hit him up straight away on Twitter. I just said, "Oh, would you fancy coming on?" And immediately followed back by the studio and AJ inboxed us. Said, "Yeah, here's the email. Let's get it set up." Really nice guy. He's went out of his way. I said, "Listen, who would you want to bring on to kind of discuss different aspects of the development of that game?" And left that to him. So he's went and kind of thought about who he wants to bring with him, and kind of that's how it's went. It's nice. And
is that this Wednesday?
It is, yeah, Wednesday coming up.
Fantastic. Well, make sure everyone tunes into that then.
So that'll be fun. But other than that, I'm trying to think on kind of who I want to try and get on for our episode 20. I can't believe we're already up to 20 already. It's flown.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it does go quick, doesn't it? And like you say, when you look back over the episodes, it's like, bloody hell, I remember when we did that. To be honest, maybe Pucks and I, we haven't got to delve too far into our archives before it's just me and him on the podcast.
Yeah,
and then VJ sort of pops in, kind of a couple of shows in, and it all kind of explodes from there, really. But yeah, it's fantastic. Cool. Well, thank you very much for being here, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the chat. As always, it's an absolute pleasure. Like I say, check out Dutch's channel. I will put a link to Dutch's channel on the description. And as we said earlier, Assemble as well. Go and check out his channel. It's really high quality, particularly obviously if you're into superheroes and things like, particularly Marvel. But like I say, it does do game chat, and we'll get him on the show. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we'll do it again next week. See you then.